These are the most useful accessories you'll ever buy for your router. It doesn't matter if you're using a router table, a trim router, or a plunge and fixed base router. These will make your life so much easier. Let's go. These are bench cookies, and I like these because they have a grippy rubber on them on the top and bottom, and these are perfect for elevating your workpiece while you route, and it keeps it from sliding and moving around the workbench. I use these all the time, nearly daily out here when I'm routing small pieces, just because of how useful they are and inexpensive. Number two are the Kreg setup bars. I use these all the time for setting the height of my bits or even my blade on my table saw or the fence on the table saw. These are very, very useful. If I needed to cut a 1/2 inch groove in something, I need to set that straight bit. This notch is a 1/2 inch. This set goes from 1/8 all the way up to 1/2 inch in 1/16 inch increments. So you have several different settings there. These are useful to set that bit depth accurately every single time and very fast. And they come in a nice case so you don't lose them. Here's a little secret for you. There are Yellowhammer setup blocks that are identical to the Kreg with the exception of a couple of things. One, the color, obviously. The sizing is exactly the same. However, the Yellowhammer is less expensive and it has measurements printed on both sides, so you don't have to look at one side or the other. And I've noticed on my Kreg, especially on the 1/4 inch, they're starting to rub off. That lasering on there is starting to dull a little bit. Haven't noticed that yet with the Yellowhammer, although I haven't used them as much as I have the Kregs. So basically it's going to come down to color choice, but you can save a little money by going with the Yellowhammer brand. I've worked with Yellowhammer for a while now. They're a good company, and again, they look identical to me. Now, one thing the Kregs do have is a better case to keep them in. The Yellowhammer ones are just a plastic box with foam inside, where the Kreg one has actual cutouts for each of the blocks. So if that matters to you. Number three is this radius guide. This is another Kreg product. I bought this a few months ago and I love having this. You'll be able to create radiuses on the edge of your work. So cutting boards or even handrails on my outdoor bench I recently built. This is basically a pattern, just like we're going to use a pattern bit. You can see in this footage here, extremely easy to use, a nice handhold to keep your hands out of the way of the bit. You'll be able to make those radiuses in different sizes. This has both radiuses and flat angles on there, so you'll be able to make different profiles depending on which one of these you put in. They're easily swappable, pops right in and out. Now, if the plastic Kreg radius jig isn't your speed, they do make aluminum models. They're much more robust. They're gonna last a lot longer. And but the only bad thing is your fingers are much closer to that spinning blade. But if you're comfortable with that, it does have ledges, it locks onto the edge of that board. I've used these for a while, didn't have any issues, but I do prefer the Kreg just for the safety aspect. But if you want something that'll last you a little longer, then these aluminum jobs might be your best bet. Number four is a router bit vise. These are extremely handy because one side is for tightening, one side is for loosening. And if you need to change the bearing out on an edge profile bit, you'll be able to put this in the vise. There's a 1/2, 8mm, and 1/4 inch shank sizes. When you drop this in there, it will not let it turn to the left on the loose side or to the right on the tight side, so you can loosen and tighten that tiny little bolt on top. Without trying to hold this little bit in your hand and trying to turn it, you just can't. So this is a really nice tool to have. Number 5 on the list is mine. I make this here at the shop. If you want to check it out, I'll drop a link to this, or you can go to 731woodworks.com/store. This is a router bit tray holder. Got places for 1/4 inch bits, 1/2 inch bits, even a caliper, wrenches, a pencil, and your router table pin. So it's a nice little compact router bit storage tray that you can use in the shop, and made out of walnut. Now, one thing I like to have is a set of brass setup blocks. These allow you to kind of stack them. You can add a 1/2 inch block and a 1/4 inch block. You got 3/4, or any other combination you want. 1/2 inch and 3/16, 11/16, right? So you can combine these in any orientation you want to get the exact setup that you want and make sure that it's going to be exact every time. And all you're going to do here is just use that by feel till you get that router bit at the exact right height. My personal favorite are these brass setup blocks from Tay Tools because they have the measurements stamped into them, and a lot of them don't. They're just brass blocks at a certain dimension. These are accurate and easy to read. Next up is the Rockler Set Up Gauge. This is a really handy gauge to have if you have a router table. It can be used on a regular router, but it really shines on the router table. A couple of reasons. Number one, it has 2 slots, one for 1/2 inch, one for 1/4 inch. That puts that bit right in the center of this gauge. It allows you to set up the fence exactly center of that bit. And that's one thing I really like about it, especially if you're cutting slots, different things like that. It's just an easier way to set it up. It also has a depth gauge, which you can use on a regular router, but you could also use that on your router table to set it. So if I was trying to cut a 1/4 inch deep slot, with this router bit, it's easy to set that up. And if you're not in America using Freedom units, it does have millimeters on there, so you can use those as well. So it's dual purpose for dual places. Next up are edge guides. If your router didn't come with an edge guide, 99.9% chance that there is an edge guide available for them. Buy it today. These are one of the most used accessories for any router in my opinion. I love having an edge guide for various work, cutting grooves, dados, or dovetails, or whatever you're cutting off the edge of a board. I use these all the time, and it's one of the main things I love about having a router. It's like cutting the slots to put on the tabletop fasteners. That's what I set the edge guide, or the depth of that cut, away from the edge of the board. There's just multiple uses for these things, and if you don't have one already, go ahead and pick one up. Typically, the edge guides you get with your trim router or even a budget model router are just going to be plain unadjustable, other than the slide that go in and out of the slots of your router. One thing I like about the DeWalt edge guide that I bought with the DeWalt is it has a fine tune right here, so I can get the measurement close as far as sliding it in and out, and then when I get it where I need it or close to, I can dial that measurement in. That if I need to cut a groove or a dado at an exact right spot, this helps me do that. That's why I recommend that DeWalt fixed and plunge base router as one of your first routers you should buy. I've got a whole video about that. I'll link that in the description. I made a video just for you if you're unfamiliar with how to use a router, or even which one to buy, what kind to buy. Click that box right there. Click in the box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. You'll love that video. Also, if you want to know about the router I think every woodworker should own in their shop, check out that video. It's about this DeWalt right there.